All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi, all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. Thus, until I achieve Buddha, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from their happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. Then page 112, for those of you who have this version. If you have the PDF for the 4-session Guru Yoga, then I think it starts on page 12. So this we begin with the sevenfold puja, which is paying homage, making offerings, revealing, exposing our unskillful actions, rejoicing, revealing, exposing our unskillful actions, and putting them down, setting them aside, and then rejoicing in the great merit and positive deeds of all beings, requesting the awakened ones to continue to turn the Dharma to benefit beings in all the different ways of teaching, and then to request them to remain here for as long as samsara has not been emptied, and finally dedicating merit for the freedom of all beings from suffering. I respectfully pay homage with fierce and longing faith of the three types to you, the glorious Guru, Lord of the four Kayas. With my body, speech, and mind, I make offerings of all these established things, outer, inner, and other, the one who offers that which is offered, and the act of offering are indivisible in essence. This being so, I make this offering of the great single taste, freedom from elaborations. Grant me the accomplishment of effortlessness. I lay bare the impairments and breakings of the vows of the three vehicles, and rejoice in your liberating deeds. Please turn the wheel of Dharma in accordance with the capacities of those to be trained, and remain here for as long as samsara has not been emptied. I dedicate the merit accumulated in the three times to the welfare of wandering beings. And next is the prayer to the lineage, to the unbroken lineage, all the way from great Vajradhara down to our root Guru. So these are names of all the, mainly the names of the throne holders of Drikung Monastery, which was the first Drikung Kagyu monastery founded by Jikten Sumgön in central Tibet. So most of these are names of the formal heads that held the throne of Jikten Sumgön in Drikung Ti. Obviously, it starts with Vajradhara, and then the Indian Mahasiddhas, a few of them, and then into Marpa, Milarepa, Daoshunnu is Gampopa. Then Gampopa's three main disciples, Doje Gyalpo or Pakdu is one of them. That is Pamodrupa. Then Jikten Sumgön's name is repeated three times. Jitsun Doje Pelda, Supreme Refuge Jikten Sumgön, Dharma Lord Ranashari. So his name is repeated three times. All these three names are his names. Jugu daba durje chanchen la sowa dhebzo gyaga drupje geje sanga la sowa dhebzo Tili shira zambo la sowa dhebzo naro yesheng drub la sowa dhebzo Dagyu lo drama par la sova debso mi la shepa durje la sova debso Dangpo da o shonu la sova debso dumto kampa mi sum la sova debso Dagdu dorje gyapo la sova debso Jisen dorje pyada la sova debso Kyamcho Jikten Sumgön la sova debso Choje rana shire la sova debso Kenchen Sutrim dorje la sova debso Onchen sonam dapa la sova debso Chenga dapa jungne la sova debso Chungo doje dapa la sova debso Toga rinjen zenge la sova debso Samje drapa sonam la sova debso Chuni dorje rinjen la sova debso Tugu dorje gyapo la sova debso Nini chuki gyapo la sova debso Shinyin tundru gyapo la sova debso Rinchen pyagi gyatsen la sova debso Chogya rinchen pyazang la sova debso Ringsen chogi gyatso la sova debso Gyawang kunga rinchen la sova debso Jesen rinchen punso la sova debso Rinchen nampara gyawa la sova debso Penchen pergi gyatsen la sova debso Chole nambar gyawa la sova debso Tsungme chogya punso la sova debso Dumchen tashi punso la sova debso Jesen kwancho rinchen la sova debso Ringsen choki drapa la sova debso Kuncho trinle namgya la sova debso Kuncho trinle zampo la sova debso Trinle dundrum chogya la sova debso Kuncho tenzin jodu la sova debso Tenzin chogi nima la sova debso Kyabda beme gyatsen la sova debso Chamnyan choki gyatsen la sova debso Dubang choki gyatsen la sova debso Rinchen tempe zegen la sova debso Gyawang tuje nima la sova debso Ring zin Dunden dorje la sova debso Jesen chuki lodro la sova debso Kyaucho shive lodro la sova debso Jesen dharmakala la sova debso Desam tenzin tumten la sova debso Dogon dampo kaju la sova debso Rinchen sawe lama la sova debso Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the rarity of their freedoms and endowments, I still squander away my life. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on impermanence and death, I still fixate on composite phenomena phenomena as permanent. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the unmistaken nature of cause and effect. I still pervert what to adopt and what to abandon. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the sufferings of cyclic existence. I still take the way to the lower realms. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I safeguard the vows of individual liberation. I still lack renunciation and the determination to be free. Look upon me afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on all wandering beings as parents. I still have bias attachment to friends and aversion for enemies. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate loving kindness and compassion. I still hold on to envy and enmity. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate aspiration and action bodhicitta. I still focus only on my own welfare. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on my body as the deity's exalted form. I still cling to ordinary perception. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I have counted the mantras to be recited, I still waste away my life force. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate the samadhi of moon in the water, I still solidify things as real and substantial. Look upon me from afar with compassion, reckless and mundane, although I conclude by dissolving in the subsequent stage, I still purify and confess superficially. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on my own mind as free from elaborations, I still have conceptual attitudes. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate not grasping at whatever arises, I still affix an artificial watchfulness. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate resting freely in the natural state, I still amplify artificialities. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on unity beyond conceptions, I still get carried away by the masses of likes and dislikes. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, I supplicate you who are my refuge and protector in this and all other lives. Physician who removes the chronic diseases of samsara, hero who vanquishes the enemies that are afflictive emotions, sun which dispels the darkness of ignorance, moon that protects from the heat of suffering, jewel which fulfills all our needs and desires, you Guru who are all-inclusive and all-sufficient, I supplicate you from the depths of my heart with compassion, swiftly heed me, effortlessly bestow your blessings, grant me now and on this seat the naturally accomplished feast of the two benefits. I am endowed with both merit and devotion. Do not leave my hopes unfulfilled, don't cast away my devotion in vain. Don't let my supplications vanish unanswered. Don't be indifferent with your compassion. Refuge and protector in this life, in the intermediate state and beyond, whatever occurs, joy or sorrow, good or bad. Only you are my hope. Look upon me with eyes of compassion. You alone are my hope. Sublime, precious, venerable, and glorious root and lineage gurus, assembly of Idam deities, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, and all assemblies of Viras, Yoginis and Dakinis, please heed me. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara, nirvana, and the inherent root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 4 causes of samsara, and the resultant states of hearers and solitary realizers. And may all the sentient beings, limitless as the sky, particularly those enemies who hate us, obstructors who harm those who create obstacles, maras who mislead, and their mara retinues, have happiness, be separated from suffering, and quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, and precious Bodhi. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may we benefit sentient beings with body, speech, and mind. May the afflictive thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind stream. May thoughts of name, fame, gain, respect, and so forth in this life not arise for even a moment. With my mind stream moistened by love, compassion, and bodhicitta, may I become as virtuous spiritual friend. With good qualities limitless as space, may I achieve the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life by the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana. And by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. And so today we begin the 6th teaching. The precious Lama taught the following. In general, all the teachings expounded by the perfectly complete Buddha, the Exalted One, are contained in the 2 categories of mantra and characteristics. So this, Kyoba Rinpoche is talking about one way to divide what the Buddha taught is to divide it into what is known as secret mantra, and characteristics. So he says, it is taught that the vehicle of characteristics, or also called vehicle of the perfections, has the two categories of the greater and lesser vehicles. So here he begins first, he says, one way to think of, the whole range of what the Buddha taught and to divide that is to divide it into what is secret mantra and what is perfection or characteristics. In some other places, like in East Asia, they call this division as the division into the exoteric and the esoteric. Exoteric and esoteric. Here, characteristics and perfections refer to what we may call the non-Tantra, the non-Vajrayana. Then secret mantra is the Vajrayana. Then Kyöpa Rinpoche says, then if you speak more generally about the non-Vajrayana, then there you can divide. There is the division into the greater and lesser vehicle. Now he doesn't say it here, but we should understand that. And as far as the other category of secret mantra, then secret mantra is necessarily only of the greater vehicle, and there's no lesser vehicle division found in secret mantra. And so in the vehicle of the perfections, or the vehicle of the characteristics, and then you have the two categories of the greater and the lesser vehicle. Now here, basically in this section, and generally speaking, Kyöpa Rinpoche takes a slightly different approach than the one that we are familiar with. What we are familiar with usually when we talk about the greater vehicle, the lesser vehicle, and then beyond that, the Vajra vehicle, we tend to think in terms of, this text is a greater vehicle text. Oh, that text is a lesser vehicle text. Oh, that text is a Vajra vehicle text. Or this particular practice. Because we chant mantras. Oh, because we use Vajra and bell. Oh, that is Vajra vehicle. Oh, over here, we talk about Pure Lands. We talk about chanting the Buddha's names. Oh, we are talking about the greater vehicle. That's kind of the usual way we think what designates this as greater vehicle and that as lesser vehicle. Yeah. Even further from this, meaning one use of these names, greater vehicle, lesser vehicle, Vajra vehicle, there's another way of using these words that has nothing to do with the teachings here. Well, not nothing, but very little to do, and in fact can cause confusion. I have talked about this in the past. Let me try to repeat that again. Greater vehicle, lesser vehicle, Vajra vehicle are also names used these days by the different groups of Buddhists to talk about themselves or to talk about other people. So some people may say things like, they practice Vajra vehicle. Usually when they say that, they mean Tibetan Buddhism. Then they will say, and then they practice the greater vehicle. And usually when people say that, they mean, these people practice Zen or practice like the Chinese Zen called Chan, or Pure Land Buddhism. And they say, that is greater vehicle. Then you might even hear people say, in Burma, Thailand, Sri Lanka, they practice the lesser vehicle. This is not how, ever. This is never, ever how Kyoba Rinpoche, and I would say the Tibetan tradition uses these terms, greater, lesser, secret mantra, or Vajra vehicles. Whenever in the Tibetan material, when these terms are used, first of all, you have to understand, most of the time when these materials are taught and written in Tibet, Tibetans have no contact with Buddhists from other places. And not like today, we turn on the internet, we get on the internet, we can see all kinds of Buddhism everywhere. So when the Tibetan text talked about, lesser vehicle or greater vehicle or Vajra vehicle, they're not talking about other Buddhists. So even though the words Mahayana, the names Mahayana, Vajrayana, now is used very commonly, even in the famous publications, like a Shambhala or, Iron's Raw or Tricycle, these popular Buddhist magazines in the English-speaking Buddhist world, they, not just them, but, many of these were like, oh, those are Mahayana, oh, those are Vajrayana. Then people are a little bit shy now to say about Buddhism in Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, so they don't do that so much anymore. And that is good, using the word Hinayana, lesser vehicle, and say, oh, those are Hinayana practitioners. So that's good, because, the Buddhists in Burma, Sri Lanka, Thailand, they don't accept this label, lesser vehicle. And in fact, they are not the lesser vehicle. They are not the lesser vehicle. Then you might say, well, what vehicle are they? Well, I don't know. Because in their system, there is no, they don't use these terms, So if you ask me, now I'm not necessarily talking about Dharma. Now I'm just saying, if you ask me what is a neutral way to kind of describe them, the Buddhism that is practiced in Burma, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, I said, well, just use the term that they use for themselves, which these days is Theravada. But actually, if you look into historical texts, it's not like all along they use this term Theravada. All along they just called it Buddhasasana. Buddhasasana simply means the Buddha's teachings. It's only again when they come into contact with other Buddhists, then they have to say, "Oh, we our tradition. Oh, we are Theravada." It means the way of the elders, the tradition of the elders, Thera. They follow that. In fact, it's referring to ordination lineage. Their ordination, their monastic ordination lineage goes back to this group who identified themselves as the elders, Thera. So when we see these terms these days, Mahayana, Hinayana, Vajrayana, we have to first ask, what is the context? If the context is Tibetan Buddhist texts, then they are referring to something that is within Tibetan Buddhism. So I feel personally that it's a mistake for us in the Tibetan text, in the Tibetan context, out of politeness, to substitute Hinayana with Theravada. It's inaccurate. Tibetans know nothing about Theravada. In their text, when Tibetans talk about Hinayana, they are talking about a particular mode of practicing the Buddha's teachings. And as we will see, Kyoba Rinpoche, how he talks about it, you'll see that it has no resemblance to what Theravada is. In the Theravada system, they have a way of laying out what the Bodhisattva path entails. Although the main path they lay out is the path of the hearers and the arhats. But they also have how they understand the Bodhisattva path to consist of. But we should not, randomly substitute. Like in this, for example, if we were to translate this text, it would be a mistake to substitute lesser vehicle, what's here in called lesser vehicle, and think, oh, it's more polite to call them the way of the elders. No. The way of the elders refer to a particular group of Buddhists with a very particular history, a particular historical context, and a particular area that they are the dominant form of Buddhism today. Okay? So this is just some clarifying some how terms are used and how we confuse all these terms and categories these days. Now, here he says, so there are the categories of the greater and lesser vehicle. This distinction into vehicles, however, is applied to the recipients, the teaching's recipients, the persons, and not to the teachings themselves. So this is a very interesting view. This is a very interesting position. And this is kind of unique. In fact, the mainstream Tibetan Buddhist world scrupulously would say, this set of texts, this set of teachings, oh, this is Hinayana. Oh, this is Mahayana perfection and characteristics. Oh, this is secret mantra Vajrayana. And then within Vajrayana, oh, these texts, these things here are, action tantra, and this is performance tantra, and this is yoga tantra, and this is highest yoga tantra, and this is the mother tantras of the highest yoga tantra, this is the father tantras of the highest yoga tantra, and this is the non-dual tantra of the and so on and so forth. A lot of intellectual and energy is spent on clearly drawing these lines, and what makes this, this yana, and what makes that yana, and all of that. Jikten Sumgön says here, he says, on the part of the collections of scriptures, there is no greater or lesser vehicle. Now, it is not as if Gyoba Rinpoche is uneducated. In fact, these sutras, some of them very explicitly in their title says, this is the Mahayana Sutra of the blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so it's not that Gyoba Rinpoche has not read any sutras. He has. But he is making an emphasis that is more important insofar as practitioners are concerned. He's not so concerned about the scholastic, formal education part of things. Now, you might think, oh, yes, of course. But you should not, because especially in the Tibetan tradition, there is great emphasis and admiration for scholastic studies. I know in the West, especially, when we want to insult someone, we say, he's an intellectual. But in Tibetan tradition, generally speaking, intellectuals are greatly admired. Scholars are greatly admired. So all the kempos, all the geshes, these are, like today you go to the monastery, all these gatherings, big events, all the front rows, the best seating, all reserved for kempos and geshes. Because they are the learned ones. That's great admiration. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, always will say, you should learn and learn and learn, even learn until the day of your death. You should still keep learning. So that's the mainstream, to be able to master all the teachings and all their, divisions and categories. But Gyalpa Rinpoche's approach doesn't emphasize this kind of learning. Now, in the group that he's probably teaching to, there were definitely those who have trained in these approaches. Probably spent some years, studying and mastering these systems, but now they have arrived at the Drikung Valley, and they have come to Gyalpa Rinpoche to say, instruct me on how to train the mind. Pacify my mind for me. And then he says, okay, if that's what you want, we have that to offer you here. If you want to learn philosophy, debate, logic, reasoning, then we don't specialize in that here. Or ritual, magic, all those are part and parcel of this big system, Magic, ritual, we don't specialize in that here. You have to go somewhere else. That you have a background in any of these things, that's no problem. And that you have even a personal interest, that's no problem. But if you come here and you want to learn what we have to offer, meaning like in the Drikung Valley during the time of Gyalpa Rinpoche, then he says, what we have to offer is what to do with this unruly mind of yours. You want to pacify it? You want to know what to do with it? Here, we do specialize in that. Yeah? So this is the approach we're seeing, in this text. In this way, although the Guhya Samaja Tantra, and so this is a secret mantra text, normally said to be a secret mantra text, and one of the highest and most profound. So he uses this example. He says, in this way, although the Guhya Samaja might be considered the highest practice, someone who practices that, but aspiring for the Bodhi of the hearers, then through that practice, they will achieve the Bodhi of hearers. And the Bodhi of hearers is a limited Bodhi, a limited awakening, as in personal, only myself. I say, so if you practice, so now, the way Gyalpa Rinpoche talks about it, he's saying, yes, there's even, so-called lesser vehicle secret mantra. According to the formal categories, the mainstream divisions, there's no such thing as lesser vehicle in secret mantra. But Kyoba Rinpoche is saying, if you practice secret mantra and your motivation is simply, I want to get out of samsara. I want to get out of samsara ASAP. Myself. Other people, I don't know. No time. I can't. It's too much to think about liberating others. And in a way, we're not even saying that you're selfish. Khenchen Rinpoche says, it's not so much an issue of selfish as it is an issue of absence and presence of great courage. Are you daring enough to think not just for yourself, but for all beings? Do you have what it takes? Do you have the guts? That's why bodhisattva, one etymology of sattva is heroic awakening being. Awakened heroes. So that heroic emphasizes this great courage that is necessary to take this bodhisattva vow. He says, so but if you practice even something like the Guhya Samaja, which is the highest, conventionally, formally speaking, is considered the highest among even secret mantra. But if you practice that with the intention, with the motivation of a hearer, then you achieve. Through that practice, you will achieve a hearer's awakening. In the same way, someone who practices that, the Guhya Samaja, aspiring for the state of a solitary realizer, or aspiring for unsurpassable awakening, this is the awakening of complete and perfect Buddhas, then they will achieve those bodhis accordingly. So the three bodhis, the three awakenings, the awakenings of hearers, the awakening of solitary realizers, the awakening of unsurpassed Buddhas. So the Pali or Sanskrit is Shravaka Buddhas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and Samnya Sambuddhas. Shravaka Buddhas are hearer Buddhas. In fact, all three can be called Buddhas. But they are hearer Buddhas, Pratyeka Buddhas, solitary Buddhas, and Samnya Sambuddha, perfect and complete Buddhas, unsurpassed Buddhas. So these are the three bodhis, the three awakenings. There is a couple of places, websites, where the definitions of these terms are most relevant to the material that we are looking at, meaning generally Tibetan Buddhism. I'm not even talking about Kyoba Rinpoche's definitions, but the general mainstream Tibetan Buddhist definitions. The Rigpa Wiki, RIGPA, Rigpa Wiki is one place. And then, and Rigpa Wiki, as it suggests, it's a Wikipedia style entries. So you can look for all these categories. Most of them are there. The collection grows, continues to grow. And then another website, which is not so much like the style of the entries, but more kind of essays and comparing, even within Tibetan Buddhism, how certain terms are defined, certain terms are used, is the Study Buddhism website maintained by Alex Berzin's students. Alex Berzin, most of his teachings are there. So definition of terms is really important. And I'm not insisting that they're important because those definitions are like absolute truth. I'm just saying on the level of communication, if we are communicating with each other and I'm defining these terms one way and you are defining the terms another way, then there is no communication, there is just miscommunication. And so if you want to have a better chance at, actually communicating, then you need to look for the definitions that are closest to the material that we're looking at. So the material that we're looking at, is Tibetan material. And so these two places have, some of the best, I would say, available right now in terms of definitions. On the other hand, the 50 verses for novices. So this is for novice monks and nuns. And there is a text called the 50 verses for training novices. So that is often called, understood as a Hinayana, lesser vehicle text. So one possible way of translating Hinayana is personal or individual vehicle. This is not a literal translation. This is more a meaning translation. Hina to be translated as individual or personal, meaning these are teachings, that generally speaking applies to oneself, limited to the individual. But he says here, on the other hand, although the 50 verses for novices might be considered the lowest practice, but if someone practices this with the aspiration of the awakening of the hearers, then they will obtain that. And if someone practices this with the aspiration of a solitary realizer, they will attain that. And if they practice this with the goal of unsurpassed awakening, they will attain that. So meaning, it's not the teachings themselves, it's not the practices themselves that make something greater or lesser. It's the motivation. It's the scope of our intention. According to that intention, according to that motivation, the corresponding result is going to arise without mistake. So this is also related then to karmic causality, without mistake. Cause and effect, embodiment of intentions. Thus, on the part of the collections of scriptures, there is no greater or lesser vehicle. The greater or lesser vehicle are stages of the individual's comprehension. In fact, these are stages of comprehension or stages of maturity that we all necessarily have to go through. So it's not even saying that, or rather it's saying, when we see these stages being discussed, superficially it might seem like it's talking about the material themselves. This material is great vehicle, this material is lesser vehicle. Gilbert says, a more important meaning, a more profound meaning is to understand our capacity. We then therefore necessarily begin with an individual, limited to the individual capacity. Like right now, realistically, we are limited to an individual capacity. Probably. On a good day, we may entertain the greater capacity. But nonetheless, right, we, for example, open our practice with all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me. We use these words to try to increase our capacity. So then we go from the individual, the limited, to the great, the universal. We go from Hina to Maha. To even be on the Hina level, the lesser level, is not so easy. So in Atisha's famous teaching on the three capacities, he has a teaching called the three capacities. He says that beings can be divided into three spiritual beings, he says. Beings who are interested in the spiritual path can be divided into three capacities. He says right now, most of us are not even one of the three. Right now, we're not yet spiritual beings with true interest in spirituality. Right now, we're not even of the lower capacity. Right now, we are just instant gratification people. And in fact, there's even the spirituality of instant gratification. If we're not careful, we can turn our spirituality to instant gratification, especially the so-called higher teachings. Oh, I'm Buddha now. Yes. Be here now, Be here now with all the afflictive emotions. Be here. I'm so present in this prison. You're still in prison, He says, most of us are not yet even of the lower capacity. The lower capacity are those who are able to have a perspective that extends beyond the present, whether the present moment or the present life. And so in traditional expression, it says, those who are able to think about future happiness in terms of future rebirth in the human realm or in the Deva realm. That's the traditional language used, which I suggest you can translate that to, you can understand that too. Those who are able to see beyond the present and able to see into the bigger picture, to say that I should not sacrifice, the long term for the purposes of mere short-term enjoyments, short-term satisfaction, short-term pleasures, but to be able to see. So into future lifetimes is the traditional expression. The middling capacity is taking a step further to understand that actually just being able to see into beyond the present, whether the present moment or the present conditions or the present life, to see beyond that is not enough, because until and unless we have a determination to be free, Whatever future that we are working on ensuring will bring only happiness and not suffering is going to be limited in its effectiveness. If we want it to be effective, we have to be determined to be free from samsara. So that corresponds to the hearer and the solitary realizer. Then the great capacity, the third, is not only that, but also, in fact, for the sake of all beings. So that's the third capacity. Now, this teaching sometimes is interpreted as beings can be divided into three, and we are basically predetermined whether you are group 1, group 2, or group 3. But Kyopa Rinpoche will emphasize that these are stages of maturity, rather than you're forever stuck in one of these three. But rather you should understand that you begin here, you evolve to here, you evolve to here, and you evolve to the highest. And finally, into becoming a Buddha. Yeah. So here, he says, affiliation with the lesser or greater vehicle, as well as their attainments, depends on the specific intention that drives one to abandon. Now next topic is introduced. To abandon the 10 unwholesome deeds and to practice the 10 wholesome deeds. The 10 unwholesome deeds are what must be abandoned through body, speech, and mind. In the sphere of body, speech, and mind, everything that must be abandoned is included in the 10 unwholesome deeds. And everything that the Buddha formulated as trainings for us on what must be avoided is included in the 10 non-virtues. So mainly here he is going to talk about in this chapter the importance of understanding that what we are practicing is giving up the 10 non-virtues and cultivating, engaging in the 10 virtues. And he's going to explain how no matter you are of the lesser vehicle maturity level or the greater vehicle maturity level, you are not even practicing Buddha Dharma if you are not working on abandoning 10 non-virtues and cultivating the 10 virtues. Yeah, so the basic understanding should be what is the essence? One way of putting is, what is the essence then of Dharma practice? The essence of Dharma practice is giving up the 10 non-virtues, practicing the 10 virtues. And within this, there are levels of maturity. And so he's going to talk about the 10 virtues and how combined with bodhicitta, and how the 10 virtues combined with the generation stage of secret mantra practice, and how the 10 virtues and 10 non-virtues, where are they, in terms of the completion stages. So all from even you could say, the temporary happiness of this moment, it's still based on 10 virtues and 10 non-virtues. even to have mundane happiness. Then to have happiness that extends beyond this immediate time frame. It's still giving up 10 non-virtues, practicing the 10 virtues. Then to become free from the causes of suffering completely for yourself is abandoning the 10 non-virtues, practicing the 10 virtues. Then, to do this not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings everywhere without exception, practicing the 10 virtues, abandoning the 10 non-virtues. To be able to achieve that goal in a swift way, in an effective way, in a fast way, because you cannot bear to see your mother suffering for one extra moment. So then you have arrived at the maturity of secret mantra, of Vajrayana. And what are you practicing at that level? The 10 virtues and abandoning the 10 non-virtues. I know some of us are like, boring. Sounds like the 10 commandments. I got away from it. Now I'm back here again. What happened to nature of mind? What happened to, compassion without limits, all those things. Gilbert Rinpoche says, yes, but all those things are just Buddha, giving fancier and fancier terms and terminologies and methods and inspirations, to address the fundamental roots of confusion and suffering that we have to cut, we have to uproot, we have to cut, we have to uproot in order to become free for ourselves and for all others. So today we'll stop here. Changju Sem Cho Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Gu Che Ge Ba Nyam Pa Me Pa Yang Go Ne Gong Du Bel Wer Shung. Okay, ta-ta, everyone.